Well, the Delta variant continues to pose a threat to people who are unvaccinated.
A new study shows that the mRNA COVID vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna ones, may produce longer immunity than expected.
UW Health's Chief Quality Officer, Dr. Jeff Pothof, is back with us to discuss the latest COVID developments. Welcome back.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
So let's talk about COVID. California is recommending that people, even vaccinated, wear a mask indoors. What's going on?
Yeah, so they're a little bit worried about this Delta variant. And what we know about the Delta variant is it's more contagious. It causes a little bit more severe disease than normal COVID-19. And what I suspect is they have areas there that are relatively low as far as vaccination goes. And that could put those folks at risk for being a hotspot. And the question we don't know yet about Delta is if you're fully vaccinated and you get those real mild symptoms from Delta, could you maybe pass that on to unvaccinated people? But really those masks are to protect those folks who aren't vaccinated.
Oh, interesting. Well, what about this study that showed that the vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, may last longer and extend your immunity?
Yeah, you know, this is an interesting study because they're looking at the immune response that you make to these mRNA vaccines, so Pfizer and Moderna, and what they're finding is the cells and how they react are doing what we would expect if they were going to give us longer lasting immunity. So there's this idea that maybe we won't need a booster at 1 year, maybe we won't need it at 2 years. But as with all things COVID, things change. So I'm not ready to bet the house on the fact that we don't need a booster. But the immunity we get from these vaccines is looking to be really good.
But what if you had the J&J vaccine? Then would you need a booster?
Yeah, that one hasn't been studied as well. So we don't know. If we just go based on technology, the technology used in the J&J vaccine usually wouldn't provide as long-lasting immunity as, say, an mRNA vaccine.
How would scientists determine if you needed a booster? They take somebody infected and look at what's going on?
Yeah, and they can also look at all these people that are in these trials right now, you know, the tens of thousands of people in trials, and they do blood draws on these individuals, and they say, hey, are the cells there at the quantity that we want to see, where we would assume that they would have immunity? And they'll trend these folks over time to see if those numbers decrease. Once they get to a certain level, they'll start to know that we need a booster.
Oh, that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the Delta variant that everyone is still very concerned about. It's causing some severe restrictions in other parts of the world, in Australia and Asia and parts of the UK, and this is a global pandemic. So do we have any reason to be concerned here in the States?
You know, I think we do, and I think what we'll see, though, is very regional areas of Delta variant hotspots, and these will be in regions where vaccinations are really low. So you might take a place like Dane County where vaccination rates are really high and it might not be such a big issue, but you go to Arkansas and you take a rural county where vaccination rates are very low and it starts to become a big issue because now patients are getting sick, they're more sick, they could start causing problems for those local health systems down there. So not the big problem we had last fall, but certainly we could see hotspots as Delta becomes the dominant strain.
And the fall is a big question mark at this point.
I think it is. I think Delta will become more common as we get into fall. We'll see where we're at with vaccination this fall. And then we have all those kids who, as of right now, not eligible for a vaccine. If they go back to the classroom unmasked and Delta shows up with them, that could create some problems.
I also read there's an increase in other respiratory diseases, especially among young people.
Yeah, we're seeing that here even locally. Starting about June 13th, 14th, we started to see a reemergence of these, you know, viruses that we were familiar with before the pandemic. RSV, parainfluenza, regular cold, and now that people are hanging out together unmasked, these things are coming back.
It's always something, isn't it?
This is a maybe above my pay grade and too complicated a question, but can you explain how these variants work? It seems like the longer they go on, the more efficient they become and the more contagious they get. So could we potentially have a variant that is impervious to our vaccines?
So that is the big concern, is do we develop a variant that is impervious? You know, what happens is these viruses are under tremendous pressure. All these people are vaccinated. They're having a hard time spreading. So the viruses that actually succeed in spreading are those that have mutated almost serendipitously to avoid our immune systems, to be more contagious. So it's this natural selection on these viruses that make, you know, the most fit virus become the dominant strain. And that's what we're seeing with COVID-19. That's what we see with viruses historically.
And the flu, are we still going to need a flu shot this fall?
Yeah, absolutely. So flu will come back this fall, and you know, a good early indicator is we're seeing more of these other respiratory viruses right now. That's a good sign that we're going to see more influenza this fall when we hit influenza season.
But if you're vaccinated, enjoy the 4th of July weekend.
Absolutely. If you're vaccinated, life is good right now. Enjoy 4th of July.
You too. You as well. Doctor, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pothof. Great to see you.
We'll see you next week.
Yep.
And we'll be right back with the final check of your forecast.